Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here to review Animorphs. This show is so fascinating by how it was to have gone on and done so well, have so many people that periodically buy like merch of it, and it's just like, hey, yeah, guys, remember Animorphs? Yeah, like I have this blanket that has Animorphs on it. Yeah, I have this shirt that is, yeah. Like I periodically see that from people. I also go on and I had been a fan and still am of a channel called Geek Evolution that at one point had done a watch along of this pilot. So after finally going on and watching the pilot, because I never watched it when it originally aired, because I think I may have saw like a little bit of a clip of one of the episodes, but I never fully committed in its original airing to watch the show. It just didn't happen for me because there were so many other things going on at that time of shows and stuff to watch that one just kind of fell through. But anyways, uh, so plus it was just another book show at that point. I'm like, man, I've been watching Goosebumps, all these other creepy and weird other things. Yeah. So with that said, I am to finally get to Animorphs now, and here is my thoughts about it. Honestly, Animorphs feels like a puzzle that I'm still trying to figure out, even after 4 episodes. I feel that the show is, of course, fairly cheap and maybe not productive, but I'm just like, how is it that humans turning into animals is going to be is to be a very credible threat against what is to be the equivalent of like the Elijah Wood movie Faculty or Invasion of the Body Snatchers alien race that can just go on and easily just make their way into somebody's ear by becoming a bug and take control of them and be able to multiply so easily. And the humans turning to animals group is to be so small. Like, I'm trying to figure out the puzzle of how that's going to work out. So, with that said, let me try to do that through explaining what I had seen through these bit of episodes in a very kind of condensed down version. So, we make our way into the pilot episode, which I will explain the most of, and then when we get to the other episodes, I'll kind of get little bits and pieces here and there. So, with that said, for the pilot episode, we go on and have Homer that is to lose track of his dog, and the group of his friends all go with him to find his dog. As they make their way to retrieve the dog, they find that they're going to retrieve something else, called an alien that is to be falling down and dying, and is going to explain to them, hey, here's this delicious magic cube that I have that I can have you all touch because of the courtesy that you had all given me by trying to keep me alive, which was a fruitless endeavor anyways. I'm going to give you this magic cube because of your good deeds, and you're all going to turn into animals once doing this, because all you have to do is touch something and capture its DNA. And so, we'd go on to have these kids touch this magic cube, and then are to go on and explain the reason why he has crash landed onto their planet to make them aware that there is this threat of these controllers or Yerks that are also going to make their way to their planet also, and they may already have. So after the kids go on and touch this magic cube, all of a sudden the controller starts swooping in, which leads the kids to start to be scrambling and running off. Having the controllers, as well as also Vesser 3, assume that those kids may go on and may have been aliens. Or the Andalites. So, Vesser 3 goes on and confronts Elfangor and kills him, and then tries to race after Jake. Eventually, Jake disappears and gets into this little pipe. Eventually, with him going on and seeing his dog, and then also seeing a guy that is be scratching his leg, Jake goes on and touches his dog, becomes the dog, and the two of them run off together. Jake goes on and regroups with his friends later on to then say that from here on out they should be a lot more like keeping this between one another because they don't know who to trust, as well as also Jake is going on and eyeing the principal and seeing him scratch his leg just like the guy did before, and realizing, the principal is to be controller, and we should go on and eventually just kind of follow him around and find out who other people are to be controllers of within other episodes. The first two episodes are going to be focusing on Jake and have him go on to be kind of like looking around and realize, like, man, yeah, man, how all of a sudden my whole life has changed, and now I'm looking around at people trying to figure out if they're controllers or not, as well as also being thrusted with this whole responsibility that Jake doesn't know if he really wants to have, but like he feels like he has to do this because he's the only one with a team of other people that could go on and save his planet. So, in episode 2, we have Marco that has his father that had just lost his wife. And as Jake and Marco are playing basketball, Jake is mentioning to Marco, it's like, well, yeah, maybe your dad might be a controller. And then Marco turns to Jake, it's like, well, what about your brother? As soon as the brother comes in, Jake is to ask Tom, hey, yeah, how about a thing of basketball? Tom is like, yeah, like, I completely am done with basketball. And Jake is like, wait a minute, like, your life is basketball. Like, you're on the basketball team. Ball! And Tom was like, yeah, no, I hate ball. Like, you know what, I like to go on and I like to just go to this club. And I like to go to this club called The Sharing. And that seems to be where my focus is at right now. Like, this club is just the bee's knees. So, goodbye, Jake. Jake is like, what? He just changed his whole, like, life course right in front of me. And then Marco's like, ah. Like, it's the whole Invasion of the Body Snatchers where they go on and they point with, like, hey, this person is a normal human, so let's all point to be like, hey, everybody get to them. It's the same thing. So, and they also reference Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Honestly, like, if we probably don't have Animorphs, we probably don't have the movie The Faculty, because that's kind of like the same idea. Anyways, so, but also, like, clearly with a movie like The Faculty, then why did we need to have kids that turn into animals that is to try to save the world? Because we have a group of kids that were to go on and do it without turning into animals, and it turned out pretty fine for them. In all honesty. So, but going into Animorphs. So, we come to find that Jake was to have been the only one that morphed into an animal. So, they go to Cassie's barn or reserve place for animals. So one by one, people start touching animals and start to become them. We have Tobias that goes on and touches a hawk, and then he runs away. The rest of the group is kind of very untrusting of Tobias, and Tobias will come to find just keeps disappearing, or we don't know if it's exactly to be him, but then I'm like, oh no, I think he did help the group. Okay, great. Like, he's kind of like from Power Rangers, he's kind of like the Tommy of the group. We're kind of unsure about him. We don't know if he's going to turn evil at some point. Yeah, like, there's a little bit of, but also he's already, there's a possibility that he's going to end up with Rachel, and Rachel is kind of like the Kimberly of the group, so we're kind of like, there's too much Power Rangers that are kind of going on that's kind of meshing with the show. I think they probably did that on purpose. But anyways, so we'd go on to have them all go into the barn, and some of the animals, I'm like, okay, there is some good use of that. But then we'd also come to find that they can change into multiple animals a lot. We'd come to find both Jake and Marco that turn into like Marco turns into a rat, but then also he can turn into a lizard with Jake, and then further along, yeah, like Marco even tries to turn into a human, which fails. So it'll be interesting to see if they can turn into a human, or if that never works out, or if it's just them turning into animals. So later on, they go into another zoo-like area to turn into lions and tigers, and so yeah, it's all about these people just turning into animals. That's the whole focus of the show. Nothing else really happens in it. Because what really is to be the MacGuffin, or the thing that is to go on and be like, hey, they get this, but they also have to keep getting it. So I don't even know if I use MacGuffin right. I'm sorry. So we go on to have this disc thing that we see here, that Elfangor goes on and throws to Tobias, and then Tobias is like, oh, Butterfingers! And so he drops it. They run off anyways to be like, man, we gotta get that disc thing. What was that disc thing that Elfangor wanted Tobias to get? Why is it that Tobias sucks so badly at catching this thing? Man, Tobias, you really sucked at catching it. You really did. Man, if only. So they go back for it, and there's a bunch of controllers all at this spot. So they all turn into animals to retrieve this disc thing, but then they come to find out that there's a disc that they need to go on and want to obtain. And so Jake is like, okay, we'll have them meet up at this mall and we'll try to trade it off. So the Animorphs trick the controllers into getting this disc, but eventually they come to find the disc is all a ruse, that it's really just some tracker. And as the Animorphs realize that it's a tracker, they then go on and throw it in some elevator for the controllers to just kind of keep going up and down this escalator, like, hey, where the heck is this thing? We can't figure out where it is. Oh, it's in an elevator. So yeah, we also, in these bit of episodes, we have this place called the Sharing. So Tom talks about the Sharing, and we eventually come to find out, as the Animorphs make their way there, that this place is to go on and house, to where the Yeerks come out of people's heads temporarily so they can regenerate, and then at some point the Animorphs go on and they try to help people escape, and that's part of the Sharing. And also we have Rachel and we have Cassie that meet up with this girl named Melissa, and they find out that she is to be part of the Sharing, so they try to pretend that they're kind of one of the controllers, and try to kind of go along with her. And the three of the girls go on and meet up with Tom, and Tom is like, yeah, I've really been trying to work on having my brother kind of go into the Sharing thing. I'm really hoping that he's going to go on and be part of all this. Because, yeah. Spoilers, everybody. Alrighty. So, I don't want to ruin the show, but it also is kind of a given here the more I explain these episodes. Tom is to be one of them, one of the controllers. And once they figure that out, the more that Tom gets involved in the show and little scenes here and there, the more the Animorphs are kind of very uncomfortable with Tom being there because he's one of them. And so, and it all gets revealed as Jake and Marco are in this janitor's closet, and there's this secret door that's opened, and the principal is talking with Tom. So, like, that's a big reveal of the show where Jake finds out, oh, my brother is one of them. So, yeah, like, I have to say, like, for overall the show, if I haven't said any of this already, so the show is low budget. It is to go on and have not a lot accomplished in it, but, like, I think I can figure out a way to say that this show is still a puzzling thing that I want to figure out. and I'm so curious of it that I want to hopefully see more of it down the road. So I'm hoping people are going to somehow be interested in this enough for me to go on and want to keep watching it. So if you all are going on and just kind of being like, well, I want to hear him do more reviews of this, spam the out of this review is all I can say. Or otherwise, if it seems that there's a decent number of views on this one, then I can justify continuing to make my way through this. It seems that right now I'm going to go on and do a weekly rotation of things, which means I'm going to go back soon and loop back around and do the very first show I ever did and cover another episode of that again. So, believe me, if you're going on and thinking that all these are just going to be one off things, it's not going to happen like that. If there's enough people that are to watch certain reviews and stuff, I'm going to loop around a week after this drops and do it again. So believe me, like, I'm going to try to get some kind of better rotation of things, as well as also try to figure out how to get more content out in the future. Either movies, shows, trying to at least do a movie and show every day, but that doesn't always happen. There's sometimes where I have to just make harsh decisions or realize that, you know what, I freaking want a life. Because at some point, I am probably not going to be able to go on and keep going at this the way I'm going at it because I'm having really just I feel like I'm doing videos every day. Plus, also, I would like to get back to doing workouts. I'd like to get back to doing other things. I'd like to try to not have to squeeze every project I can in one day. So hopefully, because it feels like in between grinding on Timu, it's like every bit of focus is just like, how can I go on and how could I do as many reviews as quickly as possible? And that gets me so tired and exhausted. So, boo-hoo, let's whip out the violins. But is there anything? It's just being honest. So, let's go on and let's get into the nitty-gritty detail of every bit of these episodes. Blow for blow, scene for scene. You know what I mean? But hopefully in a much more, hopefully condensed fashion, but we'll see about that. I've never reviewed this one before, so it's kind of hard to figure out how exactly to, in a quicker pace, break it all down. Hopefully we'll figure something out. So, with that said, make your voices heard via the views or comment or something about the Animorphs. Maybe I'll go on and I'll keep checking this out. I don't know. Like, for Animorphs, views are all over the place. Yeah, like, I think JonTron even maybe did Animorphs, a video on that, I think, maybe, right? I don't know. So I'm not banking on the fact that JonTron did it, then maybe I'll be... no, it doesn't happen that way. But yeah, like, I'll have fun with this regardless. So, that said, let's go into it. So, it is spoiler time. It's about that having a spoil this show that maybe you go on and somehow enjoy and like and what have you. Regardless of also how... I think my overall grading of Animorphs is the show is a weak fine. I don't want to go out of my way to say that Animorphs is bad, but like it's a very weak show in my opinion. So I at least will go on and I will say that this will be a thought. But man, is it just on the very slim picking of of almost being so close to a bad show? Because in 4 episodes, it doesn't feel very productive, and also it's just like this show doesn't still make sense to me. And also is a book series, so yeah, it is what. Yeah, I'm like, man, somebody really went on and did a lot of this, and it somehow worked out. So I'm just trying to figure that out, why it all happened the way it did. Anyways, so let's go on to the very beginning of this. So we have Jake, who is to go on and explain that his name is Jake, as I just bit my mouth. So Jake goes on and says that he was a regular kid up until a little until a little bit quickly realizing that his life has completely changed. So we now all of a sudden have Jake and Marco with the dog Homer that is at this arcade. They're going on, they're playing this Galactic Warrior like game, and it seems that they are probably facing off against Tobias off in the distance. Because at some point in this game, Tobias is realizing that he wants to insert another quarter in because he had lost this game, but he realizes that he doesn't have any more quarters, so he walks off. So Rachel and Cassie make their way to both Marco and Jake, and the two of them start to kind of like bust one another's chops about like, well, hey, Rachel, why are you so busy? And Rachel's like, well, yeah, I just went to a gymnastics meeting. And they're like, oh, okay. So yeah, this is just like Power Rangers. Kimberly is a gymnast. It's so much like Power Rangers. It's ridiculous. Anyways, so, but I'm sure that was probably just for the show. Maybe for the book, there's some things that are very much different than the show. But anyways, so all of a sudden Homer is starting to bark here, and then here is where Homer runs off, and Jake runs after him. So now we are to go on and have all the kids trying to find out where Homer is, and so they follow after him. So as the group of kids are all going on and tracking down Homer the dog, we have Tobias that is making his way through this warehouse because I guess it's a shortcut, and so he makes his way through this fence. So all these kids are eventually going to go on and all meet in the same direction. So because what will happen is Jake's group will go on and find Tobias, and Tobias will have Homer the dog, and so as they all meet up together, here is when the alien planet crashes and Elfangor opens a door and comes clopping out, like as if this is uh, Monty Python's Holy Grail. The guy is smacking coconuts. Like, why doesn't he just go on and make the sound? You could have gone on and just done that. So the kids are very afraid. Homer even goes on and ducks behind this thing to kind of like, okay, what's going on? So if anything, keep Homer safe at all costs. Even keep the baby from turning into a controller, Marco, because I know you're going on and eyeing that baby. And like, hey, are you controller baby? There's like, goo goo gaga, motherfucker. So Jake goes on and just be worried that maybe this should be a time where they should be hiding behind barrels, hoping that this alien is not going to hurt them. Elfangar goes on and is to make his way out and then drops. So they all scramble around Elfangor, and Elfangor starts talking to them. It's like, how is it that this alien is talking to us? And he's like, yeah, through your thoughts, I can speak to you. So the girls go on and they make the decision that's like, hey, like we can help you. We can probably put some pressure onto this wound. Jake, go on and give him your coat. We can go and put pressure on this wound and hope that it'll keep him alive. Elfanger goes on and says, I'm sorry, but my wound is very fatal, and there's nothing you can do for me. So Rachel goes on and explains it. Well, hey, like my friend Cassie knows a lot about animals. Maybe since you're an animal, technically with the way that you are to be having the clopping of your feet there, maybe you are. Maybe there's a way we can figure you out. So, uh, so if anything, Elfangor makes them aware that there may be others that are coming their way here, and that they're coming to destroy you. So if anything, that's where Elfanger goes on to explain the whole Yerks and the whole uh, controllers who are parasites that go inside your ear and go on and take control of you through your brain. So eventually, somehow, that is to be what does his planet in. So I'm just kind of like, okay, how are we going to go and do any better? So Elfangar goes on and realizes that a bunch of the group are to start to have a number of questions about the whole alien slug thing, and Elfinger says, "Hey, we have no time. If anything, you have one choice. I'm going to go on. I'm going to give you this magic cube. You can decide whether or not to touch it and become a human that morphs into animal yourself." So we'd start to have a number of people who starts touching the magic cube, and the more and more people start to touch it, it seems like if anything, there is some kind of holdouts, and there's some people that are very unsure, but they touch it anyways. Uh, so so Alfanger goes on to explain it's like, okay, after you've gone on to be able to touch this cube, you will be able to go on and uh, turn yourselves into creatures with all of just the touch of and obtaining their DNA. So so you can be able to change into any animal. Uh, and when you change, uh, you only have 2 hours to be able to hold that transformation and no more. So I was thinking while I was watching this whole thing, I was like, so like there's stuff that they go on and they bring up in other episodes. I'm like, is that because they didn't do that in the first pilot episode? But I guess it's like, oh yeah, they do bring it up. They bring it up here because Elfinger goes on and talks about the whole 2 Earth hours, and they bring that up later on in another episode. So, uh, so if they don't go on and if they don't stay in, if they stay in that form past 2 hours, they'll be trapped in that form forever. Because we'll come to find that even when they transform into the animals for a very brief time, there's at some point where their animal side takes over. Like one girl ends up changing into a cat, and Marco or Rachel ends up turning into a cat, Marco turns into a rat, and all of a sudden Rachel is starting to attack Marco because uh just nature takes over. And then she goes, I'm like, man, I can't believe I was to go on and attack Marco the way I did. And they're like, well, yeah, I guess like the longer that you're in these animals, like there's some part of your animal side that kind of takes over. So you just kind of have to kind of be worried or worry about like trying to keep control. So now we are to go on and also have the Vesser 3 and all the controllers making their way. And so Elfangar goes on and tells the kids to run off, and also Elfangar tries to toss the disc to Tobias, but he drops it, and then they run off anyways. So the kids all hide again behind these barrels, and Elfangar goes on and meets with Vesser 3, that is to look just like Elfangor. But at least now we can actually see Vesser 3's face and see what Elfangor actually looks like, because Elfangor we could just go on and kind of just see like an outline, but not much else. When we actually see Vesser 3, we can actually look at his face and see what he is. So it's like, oh, okay. So 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 we go on to have one of the we have Vesser 3 that goes in to explain how he took over one of Elfangor's alien race people, and then uh, as he realizes that the technology that Elfangor had is now missing or now like useless to them, they're to go on and have Vesser 3 then morph into this bigger monster creature that goes on to then grab Elfangor, kill him or eat him, and then we now then go on to have the kids assume there's probably going to be more than just Vesser 3 that is there. Maybe we should get the heck out of here. As they go on and as they do that, lights start to pop in and we start to see more controllers, as well as also Rachel screams out no, hoping that Elfangor would be free by their distraction. But Elfangor dies anyways. So the controllers come in and now all the Animorphs scramble. As we'd come to find that Besser 3 is to turn into the Hork Bajir, the alien animal, which honestly it's kind of a weird head bobbin bobblehead looking thing. It looks very strange. It goes on and it sees Jake and it starts chasing after him. After also all the controllers are trying to scramble and trying to figure out where they can chase after all these kids. So Hork Bajor goes on and scratches Jake in the back. And so Jake scrambles and gets inside one of these large pipes or tubes or whatever. It's a large pipe. And so he scrambles inside of there and eventually is waiting to see if he can get away. And eventually there is somebody coming for him. And so Jake naturally assumes it's one of the controllers, but he'd find instead that it's just his dog Homer. Homer gets into the pipe with Jake, so Jake is now trying to comfort his dog, and the controllers are continuing to run around. So here's where Jake goes on and sees somebody scratching their leg and is thinking that they are to go on and to have seen somebody. We have the Hork Bajor that goes on to be smacking its legs onto the ground and making its way around. So we have Jake desperately going to his dog for help to say, hey, yeah, I need your help, Homer. So as Jake touches Homer, that's when Jake inevitably becomes his own dog. So the two of them morph and they scramble out of the pipe. And we have Vesser 3 that is telling his controllers, like, hey, you should have gotten after those dogs. Maybe one of them was an Andalite. So, as the two dogs scramble away, we then would go on to have at the cafeteria everybody kind of grouped together. And so Marcus starts making jokes about what had happened the night before. And they're like, hey, man, maybe you shouldn't be so loud about everything that we did last night. Because probably somebody's going to think you're crazy, but also, if anything, maybe we shouldn't be saying about the alien that we saw last night. Like, yeah, it was some dude on four legs, whatever that was. So, Marcus is going to call everybody idiots and saying that they're going to have to somehow figure out a way to save the world. So, as Jake goes on and makes his way to the cafeteria table, he goes on to tell everybody about his morphing experience because he had to, and it felt so bizarre. And so Jake goes on and says how he put his hand on his dog Homer, and he concentrated on becoming the dog, and he started to mutate. So, and that his hand ended up becoming a paw. So they're trying to figure it out, and they're like, okay, so you became your dog? And he's like, no, Homer was right next to me. I just became a copy of him. And they're like, oh, okay. So that way I guess the readers don't get confused also by like, oh, so like did Jake become Homer? But also we see all two dogs there, so it's like, okay, so anyways. So anyway. So uh so Jake is looking at everybody, and because they didn't see it themselves, but like, why would Jake lie? As well as also, they all just saw an alien, so Jake telling them something else, like, wouldn't they believe him? But if anything, at this point, they're kind of very skeptical because they haven't gone through the mutation themselves. So, uh, so Marcus says it's all too weird, and uh, and so and Jake is all very confused also that he thinks that this is all just some dream and they're going to wake up from it. So before they all go out and save the world, they're going to go on and want to focus on a good cafeteria meal. And here is, of course, as a number of people start to pass by, Jake all tells everybody to, like, hey, let's get a little tighter in this table. And we also see that the principal is to see that there's some kind of uh, crap on the floor, forcing some other teacher to clean it up. And here's where the principal goes on and scratches his leg. Jake notices that. He turns to then the group and is like, hey, I remember from last night, there's a guy who scratched his leg just like the principal did. So we have to assume that the principal is now one of the controls. So right after that, they cut 2 credits, and now episode 1 is at least down. So now we cut to the second episode, and we start this all over again with My Name is Jake. But this time around, he goes on and says, yeah, my name is Jake, and that's all I can tell you. So he doesn't want to tell anybody because he doesn't know who's listening in, which is actually really interesting. Like, it's kind of making us to feel like this is all just like a weird like thing where like even he can't trust the show with his narration. So it's kind of keeping us at the edge of our seat to try to figure out, like, or try to like be like, okay, like we're feeling that this is kind of like a hush hush kind of thing that like we're very exclusive to, and we're in on the story, and like, okay, like that's what's kind of cool about it. So Jake starts turning around and starts seeing all these people, and he starts kind of briefly talking to them. Hey, yeah, nice day, and sees a baby. It's like, that baby. I don't trust that baby. So Jake goes on and continues to just spiral off to just be like, yeah, I don't really trust anybody. Like, it could be you, it could be me, even though I know I'm not a controller. So, all right, so we now cut to Jake, who has made his way back to that place of that crash landing site just to be sure what they saw was to be something that was to be real. And so as Jake makes his way around the site, we go on to have all these people in hazmat suits that are trying to get all this alien uh, ship debris and kind of put it away. And so we have the principal that makes his way to these controllers to go on and be like, hey, yeah, you guys have a lot of alien debris here. We need to kind of wrap this up. We need to kind of clean all this up because otherwise, like, people are going to get more suspicious. So now we make our way to this barn. Tobias meets up with Michelle, who is to own this kind of animal reservation place, which is really, I think, in the books to just be called a barn. So as the rest of the group comes in to eventually go on into this barn to touch all these animals and become one themselves, it seems that Tobias goes on and has Michelle keep talking about this hawk, about it's a hawk that had broken its leg, and she has been watching and raising him for a very long time. So Tobias goes on and touches the hawk, and if anything, like, we didn't know whether or not that Tobias would eventually morph into anything because he was just petting it. Like, he wasn't really concentrating on touching the animal and becoming one itself. So we just didn't know how exactly the morph sequence works. So eventually Jake makes his way to the barn with the rest of the group here, and so Jake goes on and asks Michelle if Cassie's around, and Michelle answers with, "Well, she's probably somewhere in the house, so I'll get her." So Michelle goes on and tells everybody to be careful with these animals because she doesn't want anybody to lose a finger, and then she leaves. So Jake goes on and informs the group about the area that he went to and how it was all crawling with controllers, and that if anything, also the controllers could also be cops at this point. That's how high this invasion is getting to. So at this point, like, we see that this invasion is already giving us like worry that it could be like teachers, government, newspaper writers, and people on TV. It could be anybody. So now the group is going on and asking about Tobias about that whole disc. Tobias goes on and explains about how he dropped it, and that then has them realize, like, well, hey, then we should swing back around um, that place we were before and try to reobtain it. So that'll be our next mission. But if anything, we all have to start becoming animals now, and we all have to get the experience of morphing. So all of a sudden, Rachel is to be like, well, yeah, where is Cassie? She's always such a flake. And then all of a sudden, this horse comes out of nowhere and starts smacking into Rachel, like, oh, flake, you say? And then all of a sudden, we come to find that Cassie is the horse. And so she unmorphs and is to show that she is to now be um, this horse. So she's been hiding around this whole time around them to see what they would say. So now that Cassie is to have morphed and shared her experience about how the morphs are starting to become a lot more smoother, and like, smoother, you say? So if anything, the rest of the group all are to say as they look at Cassie morph that they're like wanting to barf and puke and whatever because of how gross it is. So eventually, the next one up is Rachel. She decides that she's going on and seeing this cat, and so she's like, okay, I'll go on and I'll like sit right next to this cat and I'll start morphing myself. So Rachel is to be the first one that is really going through and explaining like the whole process while she's going on and while she's morphing. And she's saying how it feels really weird. And eventually she does morph. So she's morphing right next to the cat to show you that there's two different cats here, that they're both the same. So as Tobias starts talking to Rachel, Rachel ignores him. And so Jake starts asking Rachel if she's okay. And she starts to go on and she starts like, don't bother me. She's really enjoying being a cat. So, and she feels very cool being a cat. So it's like, okay, all right, now that Rachel has become this cat, someone's next up. So they're all looking at Marco. And Marco's like, maybe we shouldn't ever morph. Maybe we should just stay as humans, and maybe that'll be the end of it. Like maybe we should go on and forget this ever happened. And they're like, no, like you probably should go on. You probably should learn how to morph because if anything, it's gonna be the best for you. Like maybe if you get into danger, maybe you being able to morph like is going to help you in certain circumstances. So Marco starts to then look around and realizes that there is a rat that is to be in this maze, and so Marco's like, I've always ever wanted a rat, so maybe I'll become one myself. Because at some point they go on and they kind of toss him around and they show him like, hey, you can become a goat or a boar or a this or a that, or like I think it was like either a goat or a pig or something. But then eventually Marco goes to the rat. So Marco at first like his head shifts, but then eventually he kind of cuts back to be like, okay, I don't know about this. So Jake goes on and dares Marco to morph, and so finally, like Marco's like, okay, give me the rat again. And they're like, no, you've already touched it. You've got its DNA. All you need to do is just concentrate. So finally, Marco does turn to the rat, and Rachel starts chasing after him. Marco ends up in rat, the rat maze thing, and Jake then says, "Hey, everybody, go on and now unmorph, because if anything, like you guys have probably been animals for way too long at this point." So, if anything, here's where the animal sign takes over, and they've gone on to realize that. So, it's all going to take them going on and morphing more often, but also morphing for longer is a thing they'll need to learn, so that way they can try to keep control of the animal side. So, man, honestly, I'm having to explain a show that I don't really understand a lot of myself, but like I think it's simple enough to where how could it really exactly be confusing? But also it's just like the main puzzle I'm still trying to figure out is just like how is it that the animal transformation is going to be effective? Because in 4 episodes, I'm like, okay, we see where one of them turn into an animal and fight off one of the controllers, and that has everyone escape at one point. So I guess that could be effective. But again, I'm still trying to figure out like maybe turning into a bird or some animals where they're small enough they can kind of slip away. But yeah, otherwise, it's like also to have Jake become a dog, I guess, is a lot faster to get away from a normal human. So I guess that could be effective. But still, I'm still trying to piece the puzzles of this thing together. So here is where Jake talks about the whole 2 hours thing, and to be that as a like, how are people going to know exactly when 2 hours are up? Are they going to have like some kind of internal clock that's going on? Are they going to have like an animal watch on them? Like, How are they going to know exactly when 2 hours seems to be a thing uh of contention? But anyways, so so now they realize the only one left to morph is now Tobias, and as soon as they turn to him, they realize that all of a sudden Tobias is now gone. Here's where everybody kind of goes out of the barn and they're like, okay, like, can we trust Tobias? Like, could he be gonna go on and tell the controllers what's going on? Like, could he be going to the authorities? Like, yeah, like, if anything, Tobias is the only one that we can't really know um where his head's at. Uh, and also we have Tobias that's behind a tree, kind of hearing them all out. Just be like, like, yeah, at least they're not going on, and they're not gonna. They're kind of very unsure. They're not completely untrusting of me. So eventually, Tobias will help them out when eventually he does become the Hawk, and then it seems it's like, okay, cool, we are working as a team. Okay, he's on our side. Good. So like it's really interesting to see that, like, okay, like a person that's kind of it's kind of unsure. Plus also, like, we have so many people here, somebody's gonna go on and not be like wanting to morph right away. But also somebody's gonna want to go on and be unsure about doing this whole thing. And it ends up being Tobias. Like Marcus was very skeptical also. Or Marco. So Marcus turns to Jake and asks, like, okay, fearless leader, what are we gonna do next? And Jake turns to Marco. It's like, wait a minute, I'm your leader? It's like, yeah, it seems like you are. So it's Marco's or Jake's like, oh, okay, great. I guess I'm the leader then. So so Jake goes on and like, well, yeah, like the disc that we were supposed to obtain last night, that's our first quest, that's our first objective. And as uh Tobias is to kind of overhear that, he's like, oh yeah, like I was the one to have lost that disc, so maybe I'll go on and I'll make up for it by helping out this group, and then they'll be so relieved that I'm helping them out. So Rachel goes on and is gonna tell her sister Sarah that she's going out. Rachel goes on and hands Sarah this necklace, and Sarah's like, "Why are you giving me this necklace?" And Rachel's like, "Because you're my little sister." And Sarah's like, that doesn't seem like a good enough reason. Is there something wrong with this necklace?" And Rachel's like, "No, there's nothing wrong with the necklace. Here's your present. It's something you wanted anyways, so I'm giving it to you." So they hug it out, and like, I think with Rachel probably realizing kind of that the world is ending, that like things like that is just kind of like, well, it's just stuff. Like, if anything, yeah, let's give to the little girl, um, because maybe also somewhere down the road, her having that necklace will be a bigger thing. Then maybe at some point, Sarah won't be wearing the necklace because she's a controller, and Rachel will figure that out. It's like, hey, where's your necklace? Oh, I'm not wearing it because I don't like the necklace. I hate the necklace. It's so heavy. Da, da, da. And maybe Rachel will be like, oh my gosh, she's a controller. Maybe that's how Rachel will figure it out that her sister becomes a controller at some point. So now we make our way to Marco. Uh, so Marco has gone on to make a meal for his dad. Like, I think it's like a pasta meal or something. And the dad is like, you know what, I'm not really that hungry. And Marco's like, well, yeah, you gotta eat something. So I think since the dad is really kind of dealing with the loss of his wife recently, I think he's just gone on and like not really eating, like his life is kind of completely in the toilet, and he's just like the life just sucks. So So Jake goes on, knocks at Marco's door, and it's like, hey, are you ready to come out? So Marco goes on to explain to his father how they're doing this scavenge hunt, and Marco goes on to adjust his hair in the mirror. And so his dad is like, hey, yeah, you look beautiful enough. Go out there. Like, ah, kid. So uh, I think also Jeremy, Marco's dad, was also talking about, like, well, man, I wish we could have gone on and had like a movie marathon. Like Invasion of the Body Snatchers is on, but if anything, I can't figure out the how to program the VCR. And Marco's like, wait a minute, you're an engineer, but you can't figure out how to program the VCR? Like, didn't you watch City Slickers? So, yeah, because in the movie City Slickers, they go on and on and on about how to program the VCR. Oh my god. Um, toward the point to where one of the guys turned to the other, it's like, he'll never get it. He'll never, like, no matter how many times you explain to him, he'll never get it. Yeah, that's the whole goofy thing about the City Slickers movie. And man, does that movie probably make it a very time capsule of when that movie comes out. Even though the movie is still funny as heck, they still go on and on about programming a VCR, and then the guy chimes in and was like, "He'll never get it. He'll never get it." So, uh, so the kids all make their way back to the site, and still, as the construction guys are all working, we have the principal that walks by, and he mentions about how there is obviously still a footprint left of an alien, and how they have to go on and how they have to kind of fix that so that way no one notices the footprint. So, as the group all joins together of kids, they all turn to one another like, hey, has anybody seen Tobias? No one has. So, they're like, okay, let's go on and let's see if we can go on and find this disc. So, Rachel, you turn into a cat and you go out there and see if you can spot where the disc is. And once Rachel does turn into this cat, they realize, like, oh, she's not dirty enough. So they put dirt on her, and they spit on her, and they fart on her, and then Rachel goes out. And so Rachel is tra-la-laing wrong. And so the whole time, Rachel is in thoughts of speaking with the group so she can communicate with them. So Rachel does say that she has found it, and eventually she goes back to the group. The disc is kind of out in the open, but eventually Jake, when he turns into a dog, he will have to dig to get the disc, and then once he does, they'll run out of there. So Marco, or as Cassie is turning into this horse, Marco uh, puts on this radio recording of this airplane passing, and Marco is to have these air traffic controller kind of flares, and it's saying like, oh yeah, land, land, and it's pretending that an alien is going to land somewhere in this area. And so all the controllers are like, wait a minute, like, is he trying to help one of the aliens crash land here? What the heck? So the controller scrambles for Marco and finds that there is hooves that looks very much like a horse that they think is to be a another one of El Fangor's alien race, but it's actually just Cassie as a horse. So they go on and they chase after Marco and Cassie, and eventually they sneak away. Cassie will eventually blend into one of the backgrounds and then turn back into human as people run by. So So Marco and Cassie make their way back to the rest of the group and says like, yeah, our plan worked, and they're still try to get to us. It's like, all right, so uh, oh uh oh Tobias helped out at some point. I think, yeah, Tobias was to go on and be a hawk, and then had helped out the group, and eventually he reveals himself, and they're like, oh yeah, Tobias, oh yeah, you were this hawk, oh yeah, you helped us. And I'm trying to figure out exactly where that is, like where he helped them. Um, uh, I think it was a part where Tobias helped the group kind of like get away with the whole like shenanigans where they were going on, and trying to use the signal thing. Like he was flying in to uh to distract the controllers, is what I think was going on. I think that's what happened at some point. So Rachel goes on to say to, let me pause here for a second. Oh my god, I got a little ahead of myself. Well, I got a little ahead, but a little behind. So here's the point where Tobias was to have helped out the group. So let me explain that. So I completely forgot about the whole thing that I was kind of thinking was going to happen, but has already happened. So I'm going to bring that up now. So after Rachel was to figure out exactly where the disc is, both Rachel and Jake morph into their animals. Well, Rachel's already morphed, but Jake morphs into his dog. And Jake goes on and starts digging the disc out. We come to find that the principal is to spot the dog and cat, and immediately are thinking that they're Andalites because they're recovering this disc. So both dog and cat run off into this pipe, and the principal goes on and holds a pallet in front of the pipe, like, oh yeah, I trapped two of them in here. The hawk flies by and starts attacking the principal, and that's what frees both dog and cat to get them to escape. So eventually, Marco and Cassie escape themselves, rejoin with the rest of the group, and then Tobias goes on and morphs from a hawk to then a human being again. And so, like, oh yeah, thanks for going on and saving us. And so I've covered all that now. I've covered in more detail. So Rachel was to go on and say to Tobias after they've kind of regrouped back together, it's like, well, yeah, like, Tobias, like, for you, like, yeah, we didn't really know. Like, we were kind of unsure about you, and we were kind of scared. So and we thought you were scared. And so Tobias is like, well, yeah, I was kind of scared. Uh, but after he's gone on to start to morph into this whole hawk thing, he realizes that he really does like it. And so now that they are to go on and have the disc, they're like, okay, what can we do with it? And Marco's like, well, hey, I have a computer, so maybe we'll put it in there. Because at first they were thinking maybe the disc is maybe just some weapon, but they're like, no, it's just a normal disc. We'll put it in a computer and see what it does. So they then go on and they leave, and credits roll. And so now we're into the third episode. Here's where Marcus goes on and says, my name is Marcus. And I'm giving I'd give anything to be on the other side of things. Like, for Marcus, I think ignorance is to be bliss for him, but it's too late now. So he wanted to go on and be normal instead of being in this predicament. But too bad, Marcus. So, uh, but considering he isn't normal anymore and the world isn't normal anymore, and that at any moment somebody could be sneaking up on him with an alien slug in his ear. So Marco makes his way to Jake's place and bumps into Tom. Tom ends up asking Marco, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And Marco's like, "Well, yeah, I'm looking for Jake." "Oh, well, yeah, like I just got here too." So Marco makes his way to Jake's place, and there's a number of people already there also. So Marco goes on and takes the disc, and they insert it in the computer to see what exactly they can get out of it. And it seems that they're unable to figure out how to get a file out of this disc. And there's a thing that either says retry or cancel. So they thought it worked because they saw it in a movie once called Independence Day. So we're getting in all the alien movies. So eventually Tom goes on and interjects and is starting to talk to Jake, and everybody is just kind of uncomfortable with Tom being in there, and eventually he leaves. So so now the rest of the group is going on and asking Jake what should they do next, and Jake is like, "Well, I don't really know. Maybe we should just sleep on it and see if we can come up with something." So as Marco and Jake start playing basketball, they then see Tom making his way over. So here's where Jake goes on and asks Tom, "Hey man, you want to play a quick game of basketball?" And Tom was like, "No, like I'm pretty much not interested in basketball whatsoever." And Jake is like, "Wait a minute, like your whole life is basketball. You're in a basketball team." And Tom was like, "Yeah, no, I've given up on all that. I've quit the team. Like I've all been focused on going to this club called the Sharing." So after Tom reveals all of that, everything that I probably already said before, at some point, Tom goes on and walks away. And between Jake and Marco, there was this whole dissension that maybe Marco's dad is a control, and Marco is to say to Jake, it's like, well, maybe your brother is in control because of how much we keep having him go on and ask, like, "Hey, what are you doing here? Hey," like Tom even kind of pokes in on what Jake's doing, and all these kind of other things that are very suspicious. So also, both Marco and Jake, uh, Jake is to think, yeah, there's no way my brother is could ever be an alien, and Marco turns to Jake. It's like, well, do you think people could be immune? Like, no, like nobody could be immune from this. So that I thought was also kind of cool to just be pondering and thinking about, anyways. So Marco goes back to his dad, and his dad is watching another horror film. So Marco goes on and asks his dad about this job interview he had, and Jeremy says, "Yeah, I canceled." And if anything, he did more important things like going to his mother's grave to put flowers on her grave. So I don't know if Marco could go on and take that as like, dad control, dad not control, not really sure. If anything, it seems like Jeremy hasn't really spent any time anywhere, so it could be possible that maybe he's not a control. So So Marco goes on and says, "Hey, maybe I'll go on and order pizza." And Jeremy's like, "Yeah, that sounds great." So now we have Rachel and Tobias that are kind of walking along to make their way back to Rachel's place. So Rachel goes on and is to say that it was nice that Tobias was walking along with her, um, but also asks where Tobias lives. It seems that Tobias is to be living nearby with his aunt, and he goes on to talk about how his he used to live with his uncle, but his uncle has recently passed away. And so Rachel goes on and asks Tobias about morphing into a hawk, how it feels. And also that Rachel was kind of suspicious because she had seen a bird or a hawk flying by and she thought it was Tobias. So Tobias says, "Do you ever wish that you could just fly away?" And Rachel says, "Sometimes." And all of a sudden, we have Sarah that comes in and takes a picture of Tobias, and Rachel's like, "Hey, here's a picture of your new boyfriend." And Rachel's kind of scoffs, like, come on, Sarah." So now we go back into school, and so we have Marco ending up getting stopped by Principal Chapman. And so we have Chapman that is going on and saying that uh, that one of their best students doesn't have really the best grades right now, and he's talking about Marco. Marco makes a joke of like, "Well, hey, when I find that student, I'll let you know." And so Chapman goes on to tell Marco, it's like, maybe you need better friends, maybe you need better influences. And all of a sudden, Chapman goes on to see a bug or something kind of going around. And then Chapman goes on and says disgusting creatures and then walks off. We'll come to find that it seems any time that any of these aliens are go on and probably kind of give themselves up, they always say that everything is kind of a disgusting creature, like a lizard or something like that. Eventually, they all kind of say the same line. So Chapman goes on and turns to the sign that says the sharing on it, uh, and I guess he approves. So we now have Marco and Jake. They're in class together, and so both of them are going on and looking at this lizard, and so they touch it. So Marco goes on and brings back this lizard to the classroom. Oh, yeah, I guess it was a lizard, not a bug. My bad. Because the principal almost stepped on it, so he brought it back into class. So Marco is to say it's like, well, they're dealing with way more serious stuff on a daily basis than finding acne or zit or anything. So once we have Principal Chapman going on to talk to a kid, and they're speaking about locations of Andalites, and talking about humans morphing. Principal Chapman talks about an entrance by the pool and that he's going to head there. And so both Jake and both Marco turn to lizards and follow Principal Chapman. So Principal Chapman makes his way to the pool entrance door, and or no, wait, it's a janitor closet. So that's what this is. So Principal Chapman is going on and talking to Tom, who we find out is one of them, is one of the controllers. So they've adjusted this janitor closet to have this secret door as Tom has gone on to twist this sink, and all of a sudden this door comes open. So now here is where Jake finds out that Tom is one of them. And also, here's the thing: when Jake is to be talking in his alien form here, or in his animal form, neither Chapman nor Tom could hear them. But in other episodes, Jake goes on and is talking to a controller and he hears him. So I'm curious what the difference is. So Marco goes on and apologizes to Jake that he found out that his brother was evil. And so Chapman tells Tom that they need to get a regeneration session together tonight, right after sundown. So as both Jake and Marco are to hear that, it's like, all right, we're gonna go on, we're gonna put a stop to that. Also, uh, Chapman goes on and asks Tom, it's like, well, have you gone on and have you turned Jake yet? And Tom is like, no, not yet. And so Chapman is like, well, we'll correct the problem then, turn him. So then here is where Chapman goes on and spots one of the lizards and says how it's a little disgusting creature, and then tosses it off. So we have Jake and Marco. They get out of there and they appear in one of these lockers and they squeeze out of them, which is interesting, just visual. And Marco tells Jake, it's like, well, yeah, next time if we're gonna go on and if we're gonna come back to humans, let's not do it here. Let's do it in a phone booth. At least that'll be bigger. So Jake reunites with the rest of the group, and Jake tells everybody that now Tom is a controller, and that he's gonna figure out some way to get that Yerk out of Tom's head. He's gonna figure it out. So if anything, they find out that the controllers need to do booster treatments every 3 days. And so, if anything, they just need to figure out the pattern. And so, as they go on and as they talk about the disc again, uh, um, and hoping they can figure out how to uncover the manual again. Maybe then they could justify going up against guys like Vesser 3 if they can figure out the manual. So, and I think Marco makes a joke about how he needs an instruction manual for the instruction manual. So, they go on and they mention about how they're going on and making their way to this this place so they can touch more exotic animals. So that's their big plan here. There's this area where they have this massive amount of cages, and there's more than just rats and cats and dogs there. So, if anything, considering they're in a bit more of a dangerous place, we of course have Marco that's more scared than anyone else. So, man, at some points I really always get stymied in every one of these reviews, as well as also realizing that this review is taking very long to talk about. Getting in the nitty gritty details about all this, but anyways, so we first go on to have them make their way to this tiger cage. So it seems Jake is to go on and ask Cassie if these animals have already been fed, and Cassie says yes, they've already been fed. So Jake goes on and decides get into the cage and touches the tiger, and then leaves. Then it seems that Rachel doesn't even get close to touching the tiger. She leaves the cage saying that she had touched the tiger, or touched the lion, my bad. And so, uh, now it seems as the rest of the group leave, here's where they bring up again about the disc. So they go on and they say that Jake is to have the disc on him. And because they were worried that Jake leaving the disc by his computer is to be like, hey, anybody could come into his room, anybody could take that disc. Jake goes on and says that he's having the disc in his coat, and wherever he goes is wherever the disc goes. So and they're like, okay, that's a good plan. So now they go on and have Rachel ask Jake if they could probably pass as human controllers, and Jake is like, well, we're gonna have to find out because we're gonna have to go into the sharing to free people from them being controlled. So the Animorphs mix in with the controllers, and we already see that some people are having their yerk coming out of them, and they're screaming and crying for someone to help them, and all these people are under control. Vesser 3 is also like watching by and seeing this whole progress unfolding here. So Vesser 3 is to say that like there are so many people coming to get regenerated, and he'll just be leaving and be in his chambers and not be dealing with much tonight, thinking that there isn't going to be much for him to have to do or have to control, but he'll run back out there and kind of tell people what to do at some point. So as we start to see the whole process with a yerk going into this water and aliens becoming more human again, we then are finally to have Cassie, who eventually, after a number of people, is to need to go up there so that way she can get rid of her yerk. So as she goes up there, now we realize that the rest of the team here is like, oh no, she doesn't have a Yerk inside of her. We need to go on and we need to do something to. We need to kind of distract people. So Tobias turns into a hawk and Rachel turns into a lion. So Tobias goes flying into this room with all these kind of lasers that set off this alarm, and then Rachel goes on to attack one of the guards. So Sylvester 3 comes running out to see what is going on. And here is where Jake turns into his lion and again starts. And again, there's someone else that is going on attacking more controllers. Uh, so, as the Animorphs turn back into humans, some of the controllers are hoping that they could actually have figured out who the Animorphs are, and they can't. So eventually, as the group eventually runs away, Marco goes on to explain to the group how he'd give everything just to be a normal kid again. And so Marco is saying how he's gone on to have to change into animals so often, or that he's had to change his underwear. Which is also kind of interesting. How is it that these people can change into animals, but also they still have clothing? Like, shouldn't they be naked every time they change? I don't know. That just bothers me. How it's like, how does that work? How does their clothes stay on? But I guess that's just a thing of like, well, hey, come on, like this is a kid show. This is a whatever show. Like we have to go on and we have to kind of work around like there's gonna be some stupid goofy things that don't exactly pan out or work out that well. Um, or obviously you have to go on and just kind of be like, well, like in the morph, like the clothes just kind of like they fall into the fur or whatever the animal's feathers are or something or whatever. Like they just fall inside the like it's like they just turn into their spirit animal and like we completely forget about the whole clothing thing. So they're happy they all got out of there okay, as well as also they may have gone on and freed some people who were under their control, so that's good that they did that. But they also realize that Tom is still one of them, and so the group all goes on and they all start looking at a hawk, and they're like, "Oh, is that Tobias?" And they all start talking as if this is Tobias. And the more and more they look at the bird, they're like, "Well, is that Tobias?" so if anything, since Tobias is weirdly not there, uh, like they end the credits with like, well, I'm sure he probably made it out. So we roll credits then. So now I think we are on to I think what is to be the last episode. Thank God, because this is taking I think too long. But at least I can go on and say that every one of these videos at least will probably get under 2 hours. Plus also I think this is kind of it's describing these characters. It's a lot of the origin stuff. Like I think once we get past this, maybe it'll be quicker. Maybe it'll be easier. Maybe if I don't make as bajillion jokes and like It's harder to do this one because I've never reviewed this before. So believe me, if any point if this review sucks, folks, I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you that it's the first time I'm ever reviewing this, so it's just like I'm trying to figure out how to break this down. Uh, Also, like there's some times where it takes several rounds of me like being able to figure out how to break these down better. Uh, Plus, also there's times where I'd have to go on and re-go over stuff, and then I realize, man, I did that way quicker. When I'd go on and I'd re-review stuff way later, man, would it be so quick. Like I'd be doing Power Rangers, the Mighty Morphin. I'm like, wow, like that was a really quick review because I know how to break it down better. This one I'm just like, I don't know. So that's why it takes 12 years to review an hour and a half bit of content. So my apologies. So now we cut to the last episode. We'd come to find both Jake and Mark making back to their way of arcade, which is just like it looks like they're on computers. So as they make their way into this arcade, there is all of a sudden this email going out that is to try to contact the analytes and saying to them, it's like, hey, um, we have your disc. Uh, like, hey, if you want this disc, like you have to come and meet with us. So Jake and Marco are going like, okay, like yeah, we do want this disc thing. So how are we gonna get it from them? And Jake is like, well, how about we just email them back and we'll just say that like, hey, meet us at the mall in an hour, and we'll try to figure out how to go on and get the disc away from them. So because Jake goes on and says that he had lost the disc last night, and so it's like, okay, so like, because I was thinking like, okay, like, so Jake was to say that he always had the disc on him, and so I guess it's easy with the coat that he has that it just slipped out of his pocket, so that's why like. But this whole disc thing is like, oh my god, we consistently have to go on and keep finding this disc. It's stupid how we keep having to go back to this disc thing, and they still haven't figured out any answers to this manual of nothing. So, anyways, uh, all right. So now here is where we have Rachel and Cassie that meet up with Melissa. So Rachel goes on and asks Melissa about gymnastics, like, "Oh, hey, are you going on and um, are you gonna go to gymnastics?" And Melissa's like, "No, uh, like I'm going to sharing, and if anything, my dad is making me do it." So Melissa goes on and asks both Rachel and Cassie if she wants to go, and if anything, she doesn't want to go alone. So at first, they're like, I don't think we will. But Cassie's like, well, hey, how about we go to this meeting and just kind of see what it's about? So it's like maybe we can learn more about these people if we spend more time with them. So Rachel and Cassie decide, okay, let's go to this sharing event. So now we go on to have Jake and Marco, and they're sitting down by this computer, and they meet up with Tom. Tom goes on to say to Jake, it's like, man, is this all you talk? Is that all you think about is video games? Like, come on, guy, like, grow up. So And as Tom is passing by, Jake and Marco are like, man, like we should probably be more careful about how we talk anywhere because maybe Tom overheard something. Maybe Tom wants to figure out that we were here and maybe we were the ones sending the message. We have to go on, we have to be more discreet in the future. So, and Jake is also kind of pondering about maybe what this disc could possibly be able to do. Maybe the discs can somehow be a way to cure Tom, um, or maybe the disc could be some kind of weird kind of weapon somehow. If maybe they can crack the whole manual of it and be able to decipher uh, ways of helping them. So now we cut back to Rachel and Melissa, and Melissa talks about how some sharing meetings would be beach parties. This one is some kind of regular meeting. I guess maybe this is a way for those of people that haven't become a an actual alien yet, how they're kind of luring people in by getting these like, oh yeah, hey, here's a beach party that everyone should want to come to, or yeah, here's to go on and be this party where we're gonna like a pizza party or something like giveaway party or something to kind of make it more appealing to everybody to come in there, and then they get an alien slug in there and like, oh, oh no. I thought I was gonna get pizza, but instead I got an alien slug in my ear. Ah, this sucks. My life is ruined. So, all right. So Rachel is to come to find that there's not a lot of people that can invite it into a certain bathroom. The reason why that is because that specific bathroom has a secret door to get into a meeting with all these people that are actually controllers. So Rachel, I think, goes on and turns into, I want to say she turns into a bug here, and then she's like a literal fly on the wall. As Rachel waits for the controllers to get into this meeting, she then goes on to becomes a bug and is listening in. And I think there's some moments where there's like a fly in the bug that goes under the ground and gets slapped, but it's not Rachel because you can't kill her off. So Marco is to be with Jake, and Jake is now a lizard in Marco's pocket. So Marco goes with Jake as a lizard and puts him in one of these cages. And so here is the meeting that is going on with controls, and they're talking about the construction of the new pool entrance and and how they're talking about certain risks that are going on. They're talking about their large numbers, and they're also talking about the intruders from last night, uh, and how to figure out how to capture them. So, excuse me. So now we go back to Marco. Marco is combing through the mall trying to find a security guard, and is hoping that Marco can go on and touch the security guard to get his DNA to become him. So Marco goes on and shakes the hand of security guard and thanks him for all he does, and is really going to hold onto his hand very viciously to just be really thanking him and everything like that. So Marco then goes into a bathroom stall himself to then try and become a security guard, but every time he concentrates, his body will not change. So he's like, okay, well, this isn't working. So now the controller is making his way into the pet shop, and Jake is like, okay, Marco, where are you? Like, come on. So Jake is like, okay, man, now I have to figure out who exactly is to be the controller. So here is where the controller starts to come in and starts to keep uh, saying, like, okay, Andalite, show yourself, and is going through the entire pet shop trying to figure out who the Andalite is. So Jake is going on and starting to talk to the controller and telling him to leave the disc by this cage. And then the controller says, okay, which one are you? And again, Jake is still trying to figure out when Marco is going to come in here. And yeah, Marco eventually is going to have to go on and make his way back to the pet store as Jake goes on and say that he is to be the parrot. And the controller is to ask the person that owns the pet shop, hey, let me go on and let me buy this pet here. And the pet store owner says, no, you're not going to be able to buy it because, if anything, this pet is kind of a mascot of the store, so you're not going to go on, you're not going to be able to buy it. And so Marco grabs Jake, the two of them get out of there, and as well as also Marco is to get the disc while the controller is being distracted by the cell of the bird. So Marco goes on to leave with the disc and Jake, but it seems that the security guard is to stop Marco to think that he was shoplifting. Now, Marco is being chased by this security guard uh, as soon as Marco hands the security guard this lizard, and then Marco runs away. So Jake then comes back to his normal self, and Marco is to turn into a rat to then vanish away so he couldn't be seen. So now the controllers are to realize that, okay, the Animorphs have this disc, which means they have a tracker. So the controllers in this van are talking to Vesser 3, and so Vesser and the controllers are like, okay, we're going to be able to finally take these Animorphs down. And Vesser is like, well, yeah, we need to get all of our numbers together in this one spot so we can try to get to them. And so, how close are we? Let me pause here for a second. All right, we are almost there. So I'm like, yeah, this is the last episode. It should be pretty easy to wrap this all up. Well, with the way I talk about, yeah, it doesn't get so easily wrapped up. Also, I'm like, come on, let's get under 2 hours at least. Because yeah, I'm almost doubling the time of these episodes probably. So as the controllers kind of laugh at one another as they're tracking the device, Marco turns back to his normal self, and then both Jake and Marco are to try to figure out where the disc now is, because they don't have it on them. because Marco had to drop it off somewhere, so that way Jake would go on and retrieve it later. So Marco had gone on to drop it off by this trash, and all of a sudden we come to find that now they have to go on and notice that this janitor had grabbed this disc and put it in a trash can somewhere. So now both Marco and Jake are running off to get to this dumpster. And I'm like, God dang it, at this point now in this episode, I'm like, man, they're just running around and having these people just do stuff that'll go nowhere. So Jake and Marco are to explain how they had accidentally left something in this trash that they threw away. And the janitor is like, "Hey man, I just put him in there. Like you just got to find it." So Jake is looking at Marco like, "Yeah, you're gonna be the one going in there." So Marco starts going through all the trash, and he is taking forever to kind of get nowhere. So Jake goes on to explain to Marco, "Hey man, I'm freaking hungry. I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna get some food and I'll come back." So as that is happening, we have the garbage can, or we have the garbage truck that is going to retrieve the dumpster. So Marco finds out that the truck is going to hoist this dumpster, and so Marco is trying to figure out a way to scramble out of there, but he accidentally ends up getting tossed in with the trash into this truck. So Marco is realizing that the truck is cramping in on him and he will probably get squished. So Jake comes back and realizes that, okay, Marco, where are you? And he smacks the dumpster. And all of a sudden, Jake then realizes that a garbage truck is there. He's like, oh, yeah. So Jake becomes the dog, chases after the garbage truck. And so now we're with Cassie, Rachel, Melissa, and Tom appears. So Tom ends up asking Melissa why she's there, and Melissa's like, "Well, hey, I came with two other people," and Tom starts to ask about if Rachel and Cassie could talk Jake into coming to one of these, and here's where Rachel and Cassie are just like, you know what, it's kind of late. Like I think we should probably be getting out of here. So Tom was like, well, what's your hurry? So Rachel goes on to mention how she's not really feeling that well, and if anything, they're trying to just figure out a way to get out of there. So Rachel turns to Cassie. She's like, "Yeah, I just went through a meeting, and I have a ton to tell you." So now we're back with the whole tracker situation, and two controllers are talking to Vesser 3. So the controllers realizing that the Andalites are still back at the mall, and here is where Jake and Marco meet up with the rest of the group, and they talk about what happened to Marco, about how Jake had to rescue him. So Rachel goes on to explain to the rest of the group how she went to this control meeting, and how in some of the control meeting there are still regular people there that don't know any better. So they're not all controls. Some of them are to not be turned yet, and so they're just kind of there to just be like, okay, maybe they will get turned at some point. The more they go to the sharing group, maybe it's also kind of like the placebo thing, where if some of the people look like normal humans, then it has other people not think that the ones that aren't human aren't as weird. Going to this whole sharing thing, maybe that's the whole thing of what this really is. So so they start to go on and they start to talk about all the things that they've kind of Rachel learned, and so they also start to ask about Tobias, which kind of really just kind of goes nowhere. Um, so Marco and Jake go on to talk about the adventure that they were into, and eventually they come to find that the disc is to be a fake. That they find out that it's not the same as the disc, and so they realize, oh, maybe this disc is just a tracker. So they go on, they take the disc, they put it in an elevator, and the controllers keep going up these escalators, being like, hey man, why does this disc keep going up and down? So they figure out that it's in an elevator. As the elevator opens, they all of a sudden see the disc, and they see this sign that says mutant beast on it, and the controllers are like, oh, we've been had. So the controllers walk away to try to figure out where the Andalites could possibly be, but they have no idea now. So the group of kids are all going on and staring at the stairwell, looking at the controllers like, ha ha ha, we got to you. So now the group all make their way uh, through this baseball field, and oh, at some point also, Marco is to be talking about like these skates or these roller blades or something, or maybe it was something to do that had something with wheels on it, that they kept saying if it was either nylon wheels or is fiberglass. I remember that in the episode. So, and there's gonna be a callback to it by the end. Maybe it was a skateboard. I don't know what it exactly was, but it was some kind of, I think it was maybe like rollerblades. Because of the sign of the times, maybe. So Jake and Marco had this argument of whether these uh, wheels were either fiberglass or nylon. And as they go on and as they argued about it, uh, eventually Jake is going to realize that them arguing about simple uh, wheels on rollerblades or whatever that was to just be a thing that kind of got them back to some kind of normalcy instead of having to worry uh, about this threat, about the villains. So so as Jake and as Marco was to still kind of argue about this, Rachel and Cassie are like, "What are you guys arguing about?" And Jake just kind of turns to them. It's like, "Yeah, it's a guy thing." So Jake realizes that he was wrong and Marco was right. But Jake is completely fine with losing because at some point it's like, yeah, let Marco feel good every once in a while. So as we'd go on to have the team pass here, all of a sudden we find a hawk off in the distance, and we have to draw the conclusion of whether that's Tobias or not. And I'm assuming that it probably is, because that would make the perfect amount of sense. Plus, also, like, I'm thinking after these two episodes, I think we should probably go on and probably at this point probably focus on Tobias anyways. Like, he's kind of been the guy that's been the most mysterious out of them all. But also he should be a person they should actually focus on because it makes the most sense. Because kind of leaving this episode with Tobias possibly looking over them would probably say that in the fifth episode they should be focusing on Tobias, but maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just turn into some other character and focus more on them. Either way, this was extremely hard to remember all this stuff, and also extremely hard to break all these episodes down. So, I don't know. We'll see how this will all break down in future reviews. If this does well, if this does clicks, if people go on and are interested in this, I don't know. I'm honestly just very scared about this one. I'm kind of like I don't know how people are going to interpret how I feel about this show. Also, the breakdown of it was really bad. This one was hard to break down. I don't know. It's just like this show isn't all that eventful, as well as also like this show is just like it's easier or it's harder to break down because like if anything, like there's some stuff where it's like, man, I really have to be crucial on the details, and if there's something that just kind of slips my mind, I'm just kind of effed. Regardless of what visual cues or whatever I can have to help me, yeah, it's still kind of hard to figure out how to freaking break this down. Specifically this one, I probably like there's some ones where yeah, like it would probably take multiple views, or it'd be like if I ever came back to this, like yeah, this time around I'll try to figure out a better way to talk about this and be able to tailor this better. But like if anything, I probably should have chosen a fewer amount of episodes. That probably would have been better also. But I also had done the thumbnails ahead of time of this one, so I kind of was stuck with the number of episodes I was doing. Honestly, if I was gonna go and I was gonna review this more, I'd probably cut this down to probably 3 episodes. I feel like that's a lot better. But I was kind of stuck with the thumbnail I already made. So I'm like, okay, 4 episodes it is. So with that said, I'm gonna get that out of here so I can get this at least uploaded. At least it'll be under 2 hours. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. I'm scared about this one. I'm just like, man, I don't think this review was good enough. Um, but ultimately, I'm also kind of just chasing IPs at this point. So hopefully this one does something. At least people maybe tune into like the beginning of this at least. That'll be fine. Even though I go on and I do like uh, these long stretch reviews, still it's just whatever. It's just at least these aren't 3 hours, 5 hours. I've done those in the past, and I never want to do those now. Like at least I can be fine with a video that goes at least 2 hours. Anything way over that, where like even like the 2.5 hour one, I'm like, ugh. But at least I'm gonna say like under like 2 hours and 40 is kind of where I'm going with. Plus, I've kind of realized that like if it goes really almost 2-3 hours, that it's a really challenging piece. So I can very much understand that. Like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers took like under 2 hours, so I'm like, wow, like if I can get that under 2 hours, just imagine what I can go on and what I can try to get under a condensed amount of time. Plus, again, I had no idea how to review this one, so if anything, I'm thinking in the future maybe I can figure out a better way to condense this. But I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.